in the future that the travel going experience, the guest experience is going to be more than just a, oh wow, that was a nice stay, to my gosh, I actually can feel and have a numeric number on how well I came out of that guest experience and how well I came out of that travel experience to help get me to where I'm going next.
What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is a founder, entrepreneur, technology leader, speaker, and two-time open heart surgery survivor. He speaks on his health journey, technology, and the future of hospitality, and has presented at events like BDNY, ATM Dubai, which is the Arabian Travel Market Dubai, Novartis US, and AI Deciphered. As a two-time open heart surgery survivor, he is a strong voice for patients and technology in healthcare. He also created the widely used hospitality platform Guest Anywhere, and he is a speaker and an advisory board member at Radical Innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, John Duffield. Welcome, John.
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much. Great to be here.
It's wonderful to have you on. First of all, as a fellow nutmegger, for those of you that don't know, we live like 4 miles from each other in the great small but mighty state of Connecticut. But also, the roundabout way that we met was at Radical Innovation. And also outside of that was Larry Traxler, I believe, and Missy Goldstein kind of pushing us together, corralling us together to talk. And I think it's a testament to the fact that we should always do things that make us uncomfortable. And for the past 2 years, I've been emceeing the Radical Innovation event in New York City, and just being around that and as like a crucible for meeting more people and colliding with people, like, I don't think I would have ever met you. Well, I probably would have heard you or seen you speak somewhere, but like, I'm so glad that not only did we meet as advisory board members at Radical, but we have these other friends that support Radical and fixtures in our industry that kind of brought us together to this moment. And so that's just get out of your comfort zone, everyone, and try new things. What are your thoughts on that, John?
Well, the first time I think we met, Dan, it was minutes, if not a minute, from you walking on stage to start the hosting. So Missy was kind enough to introduce us, and then it was a quick 20-second exchange, and then off you were. But I'm glad we ran into each other in walking the vast halls of the Javits Center, New York, for BDNY a month ago, perhaps.
Yes. Well, right before game time, were my hands visibly shaking, or could you see the sweat pouring out from my underarms?
You were decked out in the whole outfit. You were ready to rock. You were mic'd up, and it was almost like a hello, but I've got to walk on stage in seconds. Can we make sure we connect? We hadn't even made the connection of being local Connecticut boys even at that point. It was so quick.
Yeah, it was. I was wearing the one suit I own. So yeah, thanks for noticing my awesome outfit. So anyway, needless to say, we're part of this wonderful, vibrant community of hospitality design. I actually haven't spoken to very many technology folks on the podcast, mostly because I don't understand it. Secondly, I kind of find it boring. But thirdly, and why we're here together, is your story and just all the people that kind of pushed us together is pretty amazing. And technology, I still might not understand it. From what I hear from you and what you've told me, it's definitely not boring. And before we get into all of that, how do you define hospitality? And then tell us.
How do I define hospitality? Well, to me, it is feeling at home wherever you are in the simplest form. I mean, that's what I think. And I mean, as a tech innovation guy, I have to say that technology helping enrich the guest experience in like an invisible tech way. In some ways, technology should be boring, like you said, Dan, because the experience and the memorability and the personalization should all feel like the brand and the property delivered that. It shouldn't feel like tech delivered that. So tech should stay boring in many ways.
I agree. And actually, so I want to recalibrate.
See how I did that?
Yes, because what I will say is tech to me is boring because when it's done well, you don't experience it. It's like signage, right? Signage at a hotel or at an airport, you only notice when it's like you lose your wayfinding, right? And therefore, I know so much goes into technology on the back end to make it seamless. But when you think of like from your health scares, having two open heart surgeries, um, to how and all of your technology background that you brought into that experience. And now you're saying this experience within hospitality and just life in general could be so much better if frictionlessly, I don't even know if that's a word, can be tech enabled. That I don't know, there's so many bells and whistles that can happen and just help on a healing journey, help on just a travel journey. Like, walk us through where your thinking is on the state of technology now, and based on your lived experience, where do you see it going in the future?
Yes, happy to. And let me give a little bit more insight into the kind of heart health journey because as someone that balances tech and innovation in both the travel, hospitality, and the healthcare space, I did have a chance to be a patient a year and a half ago, which I'm still on the very edge of recovery for now. Certainly didn't plan on being a case study or experiencing life on the inside from the patient experience, but I did by purely by chance we identified a heart condition and with more investigation realized it was worse than we had thought and I needed to have full open heart surgery. I did that and had a great surgeon. I went to the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. Amazing brand experience as a marketer, as a brand marketing tech guy going into a major leading center like that. You can't help but notice the entire journey. And anyhow, had some complications. I had to go in and do the whole thing all over again after they'd closed me up with wires, plates, and screws 20 days later, which was pretty brutal, Dan. I realized that, having lived the patient experience while also, like most of us, many of us, living the guest experience when we're traveling, for me, there's this wonderful, beautiful intersection of commonality between the two. In my mind, whether you are laying your head in a luxury suite as a resort or hotel guest, or laying your head in a hospital bed in a hospital facility recovering from something significant, your stay should be memorable, personalized, and really cater to your unique individual needs. And I think we're at a point in time now with technology and some of the most recent technology in the kind of AI explosion that can really help connect a lot of tech things that were out there doing things, but not in a kind of living, breathing way. So I think there's a really interesting opportunity. In fact, I'm convinced there's an amazing opportunity for, progressive, forward-thinking owners and designers and builders that really want to reimagine the role technology plays in the guest experience for projects coming down the pike, because there's a hell of a lot of ways that tech can be thought of as a main stakeholder in the journey now, but still behind the scenes.
Thank God, I haven't been to very many hospitals. Um, but of the ones that I've been to, Mayo Clinic, I haven't been to Cleveland Clinic, um, Memorial Sloan Kettering, like these are top hospitals in the country. And I do think that they are paying attention to the role of hospitality design and borrowing from that. And also, I would even say, not even leaving technology as a separate entity, it's almost weaving that into the hospitality design, right? So I think in those handfuls of hospitals that I've been to, there really is an effort. Once you get past all the machines that go bing that you need for life safety, there is an effort to weave better design, which I personally think can promote healing. But I do think the vast majority of hospitals have not whether for budget reasons or just lack of vision, have not incorporated these elements of hospitality design and how that technology can enable that. What are your thoughts on that as far as design interweaving technology, but to help promote healing?
Well, I think there's a new intersection point coming up where we know wellness has always played a large role in hospitality, especially over the last over the last 5, 7 years. It's really come back in full force, right? And so I think as a result of that, hospitality is taking more notice of the healthcare experience and the patient journey, which is ultimately caring for people in need in some very trying moments of their lifetime. And I remember for me noticing everything about the patient going experience alongside my journey. And by the way, we cannot leave out our local incredibly powerful health network, Hartford Healthcare, where I spent lots of my recovery journey in, and they're definitely a leading institution for innovation and AI uptake. And when I was going through the hospital journey, I was looking at every single step of that process, everything from preparing yourself to check in, preparing for appointments and pre-consults, preparing for the hospital hotel visit, because the Cleveland Clinic, they have several hotels that are connected to the facility. One literally physically connected is literally a walkway to get to the property there. And there's a concierge service where you call and arrange your travel ahead of time. They send out a car, they send a vehicle to pick you up at the airport to provide you and your family pretty much luxury transportation from the airport to the Cleveland Clinic. It's all part of the experience. And so that's definitely taken a nod from hospitality, right? Because that would never, the idea of getting transport included and accommodations through a concierge service to help you get patient rates at these facilities.
When that car picks you up, are you doing like patient intake forms along the way as well, or no?
Well, they've been done already on the phone in the lead up to that. Yeah. So it's all digitized. They know you're coming. And so, some leading hospitals too on the East Coast, New York Presbyterian, for example, they give you RFID enabled bracelets as a patient when you first come in. They know how you're moving through the facility. And one of the most, not to get too deep in the healthcare side of things, but I think there's some wonderful parallels. The idea of when you have a complex condition, let's take oncology, for example, or cancer, you often have to meet many different medical experts, many different specialists during the course of a visit to a facility. So the idea of what they call a multidisciplinary care program, where you're seen by many experts together, um, it knows where you are moving through the facility, and it prepares those multidisciplinary specialists to be aware of your incoming trajectory and where you are headed and things, to arrange that meeting at the optimal time, because it is like pulling teeth trying to get these experts on their busy schedules together to see you at the right time. So that problem friction point of having multiple different specialists with extremely heavy schedules trying to get together to meet a patient, to solve that by bringing in technology to make them aware of where you are and align schedules. And so there's definitely some wonderful parallels. Think about when you are booking travel, or when you have booked travel, when you are, checking in ahead of time prior to coming to your stay, maybe some of your preferences, maybe some of your previous guest history, etc., is recorded. And maybe they know that you enjoy champagne, you enjoy a welcome cocktail, you enjoy scheduling time in the wellness facilities. So a lot of these things can come together knowing when you're coming in. So I think one thing that excites me most is the power of the data that the guest holds about themselves with their Apple Watch or with their mobile device. I don't think we've truly recognized the potential that can provide if there is the right opt-in strategy and security, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay. So aside from the opt-in strategy, which it could get creepy, right? Especially with all the wearables and all the information that they have. But aside from that, like let's just say if that opt-in is done well, from imagine for all the architects and designers and owner developers and I guess even management companies that are listening to this, um, how do you envision all of that technology from iPad to wearables, if done well, walking through that guest into the hotel, into the built environment, and then thinking about what kind of things can it change frictionlessly, seamlessly to improve your stay and promote this sense of wellness? Like where's your thinking going on that?
A big intersection, a big mega trend that is coming in my mind that was first identified by one of my favorite futurists, Amy Webb. She's a regular headline actor at South by Southwest. So I'm always at these, not only hospitality events and healthcare events, but pure tech and culture events, music, film intersection. Anyway, she comes on and she identifies this mega trend, which I feel, and I've been adapting to the hospitality travel lens, which is the concept of living intelligence. It's my new favorite trend, or signals, I guess, that are converging, Dan. And this is one of my favorites. And I unpack this at BDNY on day 2 in my talk. And it's the idea of artificial intelligence, sensors, and IoT devices, and biometrics or biotechnology.
And just so everyone knows, IoT, Internet of Things, those are all the tech enabled, from washing machines to TVs to whatever you might find in a guest room or in a hotel, an iron.
Sensors that are in detecting, having lights come on automatically, sensors that come in when you finish the bathroom, sensors that identify, volumes of people coming in, sensors that identify the elevators moving up and down, sensors that, all of these sensors that are around the place, they've been out there collecting data, and really they're just detecting movement. If there's movement, they react. Movement, they react. They're triggered by physical presence. But I think they don't learn, they don't adapt. Think about building automation, and there's some smart behind the scenes AI enabled, systems that are identifying what are the energy needs and power consumptions of properties, water consumption, electronics, lights in rooms. All of these things are already existing. But I think the beauty of two big new components to that AI, which is really understanding these reams of data that we've been collecting as properties, as these smart properties. So long, we've been banking on those, collecting them, and we look at that data for trends, and maintenance reports and power consumptions, and identifying large foot traffic or high, capacity identifiers. That influences the RevPAR, revenue per available room, all of that. But now, what we're seeing, and there's a couple of places that are piloting some things here. The concept of living intelligence is the data the guest brings in. So this is where you said it gets a little bit creepy. So imagine if you agree to opt in order for a truly, truly magical or next level experience in a property. The idea of a living space has kind of been redefined. It's living because the data you're bringing in through your Apple Watch or wearable or Whoop device, or the Aura Ring, say, it's tracking your biometrics, right? It's tracking your heart rate, body temperature, number of steps, recovery, circadian rhythms. Like, as a traveler, when I'm traveling, half the time I show up to a place exhausted, dehydrated, say, and I'm ready to relax, or I'm starving, I'm ready for food. Imagine if I opted in to share some biometrics from my health wearable, and there's the right privacy, the right security practices in place, and the right value exchange, right? Because we're not going to give this up for no reason. Then all of a sudden, the property starts to blend around my unique needs. It knows when I show up if I'm excited, exhausted, or ready to rock. It can adjust lighting, ambiance. The bar can be triggered to prepare hydration for John Duffield coming in. It knows how to set the temperature of the room. It knows if I'm running hot or not. It knows if the next morning after waking up, how my sleep was. It automatically pushes back the wellness bookings that I have set for that next day because it knows I need some more recovery. Maybe after I recovered from a workout with a trainer in the wellness facility, that I didn't recover quite as well. So the chefs might get a trigger in the kitchen to prepare meals with higher protein the next day, things like this. So all of a sudden, we're getting a property experience that understands the what, not just whether I'm moving past a sensor, but the fact that it's collecting my whereabouts through the venue, literally how I'm feeling, and is adapting automatically to give me a better recovery and a better experience. That, in a nutshell, is the concept of living intelligence applied to the travel going experience that I'm watching closely to see how that could play out.
So as you're talking, I'm thinking about innovation that's occurred in hospitality since I've been in with like the past 25 or 30 years. And I would even say it's actually kind of embarrassing. So even I would say perhaps the past 50 years, I'd like to give a shout out to Barry Sternlicht. In 1999 or something, he came up with the heavenly bed, right? And arguably, and it's so weird that that could be innovative because you spend most of your time in a room sleeping, right? So why was it that in 1999, some hotelier decided, oh, you know what, let's really focus and spend a lot of money on the bed and tell a story about that? The reason why I share that is technology, from all the anecdotal stuff that I hear from talking to different owners and management companies, the hospitality industry is always late to adopt the latest and the greatest tech. And there's so much incredible technology out there that could make the guest experience that much better and the ownership of a hotel that much more enjoyable, because like you could just the amount of visibility and transparency just from P&Ls to balance sheets to like really getting granular on information, it's all there. But much in the same way that the heavenly bed was like one of the most innovative things that's happened in hospitality in 25 years, there's just this lag for adoption. And I'm curious about what your take on that lag is, like why, number one. And then number two, like aside from whatever the why the lag exists, if you were to have a magic wand and budget adaptation opt-ins weren't an option, like what's that end vision that you see that how can technology improve the guest experience by leaps and bounds?
Well, I think part of that laggard maybe has a lot to do with, in some ways, why healthcare has a reputation for that too, or the care system, the health system in hospitals, I guess, is because I think the thought is that people are going to always need a place to stay. People are going to always need to travel and sleep in other places. And there's always going to be sick people and patients and people in hospital beds. So I think there was how much do we truly have to do? Because we're always going to get those repeat customers. But now that's just, certainly just not, it's not good enough. I think loyalty came in because of points and discounts and trying to get people in. But I think the role technology can play when fully integrated properly and not only just smart, but alive and responding to the guest. I think loyalty is due for a rebirth, Dan. I think there's new opportunity to really help attract repeat visitors purely because they don't just walk away with oh, that was a nice stay. They literally walk away with data to show how much they've improved their physical being after their stay. So I think there's a play there. I think ultimately, if I was to wave the magic wand, it would to help um, a lot of the key folks that are driving new projects and new properties, the owners, the builders, the designers, to think about what if, from a guest standpoint, if the room, if the facility could feel and respond when they've had a long day, could really transform the feeling that guests have, so that it's no longer just a place where a guest can stay. It's an environment that truly cares about them. So I think what we're going to find out is, ever since the world recovered from COVID, every company wants to be a wellness company or have some element of wellness connected to them. And I think that we're evolving to a place now where, yes, people will always want discounts, and points and things like that. But it's truly going to be a decision based on how did I feel coming out of that last stay? What did that do for my sense of well-being, connection? Um, a venue is always a step to the guests or the individual's next destination or true goal, right? But what if it helped you get there and truly elevated the way you felt coming out of it? So waving that magic wand, it's right. We've got a new construction opportunity. Here's how we weave in the role technology can play to truly do that. One of the things is, okay, what we now have to think about is, do we need a sensor strategy? We need a strategy of where to strategically plot sensors and data collection moments throughout the guest going journey through all avenues of our venue, because we're having guests that are coming in and saying, right, I will give you more information about me if the value exchange is great enough. I think that's where we're going to see real new innovation.
Do you think, I know that, you've been talking to a lot of the bigger brands and helping them kind of ideate what their next steps are, but do you think this adaptation will come as a wholesale big brand rollout, or do you think it'll come from the bottom up through independent hoteliers, to really try and iterate and make it work? And I also going back to that heavenly bed reference, I spoke to um, someone from Equinox Hotels a while ago. The gym, they did I think they have a hotel. They might have more coming, but they were really focusing on the restorative elements of sleep as well, not just from the mattress, but lighting, the sheer at the window, like how all of that works to help you A, go to sleep, but B, sleep well, and C, just be rejuvenated. But they are working on some pretty cool, innovative things that, again, I just think that there's just not a lot of innovation from a technological or biometric, or I don't even have the words for it, a health and wellness perspective in our industry.
There isn't much. It will come down because a lot of these, like you talk about, the wearables, they're happening in closed ecosystems. The we're getting results on our app of how we're feeling great, and we're very protective of that data, and that makes sense. But I recently came across some pretty amazing statistics that talked about the willingness to share that data and where that kind of what that can lead to, because there's a lot of studies in the healthcare side of things. You found 94% of patients would be willing to share a lot of the data from here if it helps their doctor provide better care, right? Price.
But then there's a firewall between the doctor and those things. Like, look, I think if anyone really wanted to dig too deeply into me, they can fucking do it. Like, it's not hard. But I don't know. I guess that whole HIPAA thing, I understand it, but I also find it as a major roadblock as well. It's like, we could have real-time health monitoring in our homes, in our hotels, in our cars, and I would be okay sharing that. But I know that there is a fear by a lot of people, and mostly of the government knowing too much. But it reminds me, okay, this is crazy. I watched the 60 Minutes years and years and years ago. There was this POW. No, yeah, he was a POW or I don't know, or maybe he was a deserter from the United States Army during the Korean War. And he went into North Korea, and 60 Minutes interviewed him in his room, in his apartment with his family. And there was a little loudspeaker box, like would be in our elementary schools, that you couldn't turn the volume all the way off. It always was something from the great leader. And I remember watching that and thinking, oh my God, that's so messed up. Like, how could anyone submit themselves or subject themselves to that? But fast forward 50 years, we're all doing it through our watches, our phones, our browsing history. We're all opting in anyway. And it's even more targeted to all of us to, I don't know, hack our brains and have us buy something at a certain moment. So I just don't know why it's almost like pretend firewalls exist.
Well, look, the privacy it's real, and people should be in control. Just as much as we can set our phone to airplane mode with one dial. I mean, we should be able to turn things off and on and have full control of our data. Don't forget, Dan, the Gen Alpha population, the Gen Alpha, anyone born from 2010 onwards, is now 24% of global population. They are not just the smartphone generation of swiping. They are the AI native generation. Okay, so they're going to expect full control and agency over all elements of their lives and their interactions with companies and businesses and brands and institutions. And so I think there's going to be a rebirth of that, but the value exchange has to be there. There was a study that BCG and Google did where they found 90% of consumers are willing to share personal data if the right value exchange is there. So we have to make sure that improves.
Okay, so let's dig into that. What is in this dream state? What is that value exchange? Right? What is that value exchange and how do you get the populace, whether Gen Alpha or before or anyone, to like recognize what that is and then submit?
Well, it's going to take a lot of research and test and learning and experimentation. And what I don't find happening enough is co-creation with users. On the healthcare side, I talk about how can we possibly architect the future of the patient experience without bringing in patients, new, young, old, into the center to help co-create the systems that will be available to them. The same thing needs to happen with hospitality, more of that. So I think you asked earlier, is it going to be the big brands, the giants coming in? I think the boutiques, the independents have a real advantage here because they have a smaller pool. I think they can do some real qualitative experimentation and pilots, and have, say, closer connection opportunities with their guests to be involved in some of that. I think it's going to take a lot of monitoring of signals and trends and data of where the world's moving in terms of expectations of brands and interactions and companies, and some really thoughtful identification of friction points and opportunities in that guest going experience. Because I think for me, it's going to end up to a point where, it will, I think loyalty, as I said, is truly ready for a rebirth. Maybe it's being commoditized a little bit. Maybe we've fallen into some of the traps of what we're seeing in the airline industry. I think I think there's a real exciting new tailwinds that are coming to us and headwinds are coming to us with how we're truly reimagining in all of this. And I think the role that the guest will play will be they'll have much more control over the intricacies of their experience.
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info. So as you're speaking, my mind just went to a lot of these branded, not in the sense of the hotel brands, but whether it's an LVMH or a car company where the people are, and it's happening more and more, they're having these kind of branded lived in experiences as a hotel. Right. And to me, I don't know why that hasn't been more widely adopted, because if you think about it, it's the ultimate brand immersion, right? Because you're breathing their air, you're seeing, it's like you're completely encapsulated in whatever that brand is trying to convince as a product, right? A lifestyle product. And as I'm thinking about that, I'm like, why doesn't Apple or someone like that who has access to this and tight security, and they have the balance sheet to just be like, you know what? Let's do an Apple hotel in San Francisco where there's so many fanboys and girls to Apple products that I bet you they could keep north of a 90% occupancy and also have this be like a lived-in lab. Actually, I know someone at Apple that does kind of on the design stuff that I need to ask them why they haven't done this yet. But it seems to me like a slam dunk as far as a laboratory to figure out how to make this seamless. So let's pretend Apple were to do it. Let's say you're standing in front of whoever it is at Apple. What's your pitch to them?
Interesting pitch challenge. Well, much in the same way that Steve Jobs was able to sway a big time executive from Pepsi. I don't know if you remember this, Dan, when he said, do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come and change the world? And that's what he said to him. And that's what got him to join Apple and help create some of these world-changing products. But if I was in front of Apple, it would be that, they're living on a mountain of user data. They create the sleekest, most widely adopted products on the face of this earth. And what's something that people are going to never stop doing? That is traveling. So there's an intersection point there where we could totally reimagine what that kind of looks like. Do you want to be something like that? Do you want to come in and change and play a role in the future of travel? And you want to see how your products can literally integrate in every step? I have to fix that a couple of times, but that's where I'd go initially.
But it's also that idea of thinking differently, and also I'm sure maybe they do this in their campus, that big spaceship building in Cupertino. But well, actually, I don't know if the employees would submit to that, but like I'm sure that there is an army of fanboys and girls that would go stay in this hotel and be like, let's change the world. Because I think the data and being able to, I don't know, just have all that telemetry of people eating, sleeping, working out, being restored. I bet you some really good stuff could come out of that I can't even imagine what it would be. But they have the ability to do it, and they have also this brand promise of security or I don't know. I don't even know what the word is. Like your information is safe with them, right?
Yeah. Well, we're seeing some early pilot attempts in this area, like SHA Wellness. I think they're in Spain, Alicante, Spain. I talked about that case study during my BDNY talk. They partnered with Whoop, the fitness band Whoop, and they've integrated their pilot cohort with guests that are integrating their data, opting in with their data. They're seeing that because they're very much focused on kind of the wellness and longevity experience. So they're thinking that all the way through, and they're kind of redefining what wellness means for them. They're looking at how their guests are recovering, how their sleep is, and they're really trying to kind of scale that up. And what they're finding is that some of the pivots they're making during their guest stay based on their biometric data. I kind of touched on that before. They have a series of longevity visits, clinician visits, fitness visits throughout their stay. It's like a 2-week retreat or 10-day retreat they're kind of planning. And they're doing some dynamic adjustments based on, how their guests are feeling during their stay. They're planning their fitness routines based on their health, sleep, and recovery. So if they don't sleep well, like I mentioned, the hotel is pushing out their gym sessions till like later in the day. They're sending live signals to the kitchen for their chef prepared meals to add certain nutrients and proteins to help with their recovery based on how they're performing, etc. So they're doing some really interesting studies. So I think a lot of these kind of future forward innovative concepts often do start at high-end luxury, right? Because they have, the budgets and the interest of certain guests and population types to partake in this. And so I think what we're going to find is some of the data and the insights that come from those experiments will ultimately start to trickle down into some smaller scale pilot experiments that can be done. We talked about the beds, for example, smart bed. Oh, you can adjust the temperature ahead of time. I always run hot, so I like to stay cool. My wife always runs cool. She likes to be heated a lot with in the bed. So I mean, instead of just you setting it automatically and then hoping it gets you right, and you don't wake up in the night in like a cold sweat because you set it too high or you set it too cold, it can keep live. It can keep updated live for the optimal sleep experience. So I think again, we're moving from smart experiences to what I'd like to call sentient experiences that are more kind of alive and responding in real time. So I think there's a lot too when it comes to, okay, you've got these devices and sensors around the property, and now you can actually integrate them from a operation standpoint to look at how you can adjust energy use to match occupancy in real time, scale operations, forecast F&B needs, not just by volume of guests coming in, but also the eating patterns of guests, the things that we're collecting from their biometrics to help, minimize food production waste, things like that. Maintenance is no longer responding to when people see a broken chair leg or something. There are sensors that understand vibration and material surfacings, ultimate microscopic sensors that are detecting that and prompting um, uh, repair replacements and things like that. So everything from the way you book to the way you experience your stay, to the way the property responds to you, to all of the post-marketing materials that come afterwards, it will all be connected and much more personalized, not because your preferences were saved, but because the data collected along the way in real time is literally making smart recommendations on how to make things just better. That's where we're going to head.
So I also, as we're talking and just riffing on this, I also appreciate that you think that the independent luxury and lifestyle brands may be the first to adopt, because I also will say that the big brands, as they've really focused and bifurcated their businesses between luxury and lifestyle and everything else, I read somewhere or heard on a quarterly call that while the big brands, 10% of the rooms of the room count is luxury and lifestyle, they contribute 20% of the total earnings or profit to the big brands, which is outsized performance. That's why they're kind of bifurcating and treating and having a different strategy around those. And then going back to Apple, I think Apple or like iPhones account for 20% of the global phone sales. I'm not an expert here, but I think it's a very small amount of total smartphone sales because it's like the ultimate luxury product, right? But I think 80 to 90% of the profits globally from all phones, mobile phones, go to Apple, right? So it seems to me like there might be, I know I've heard you say intersection, but just thinking about that, whether a big brand says, "Hey, Apple, let's pilot this," or Apple does their own thing, I don't know. I think that could be really incredible and seamless, and it gets as one step closer to that Star Trek future.
Well, we're starting this. We're seeing some, fun, interesting partnerships, right, in the world of business. We're seeing things that aren't supposed to go together. We're seeing Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart. I wondered how that went together and how they really leveraged that. We're seeing influencer partnerships. We're seeing all the cool things Hilton did with Paris Hilton, what Hilton's done with Formula One. So we're seeing a lot of these interesting partnerships with people and brands. But is there? I think we went from statistics and trends that show people respond much better to personal brands rather than business or corporate brands, right? They want to connect with real people. But is the partnership opportunity maybe circling back to brands as well? I mean, imagine if Four Seasons and Apple announced and did some type of partnership. What would that do to excite and create opportunity? So I think maybe there is an intersection opportunity here with technology luxury or technology innovation and hospitality luxury, perhaps, because when you think of the amount of people that have these devices, I think there could be something really interesting that could come from that, maybe.
You're having a ton of talks with people about how to um, potentially integrate all the technology that's available into the guest experience. What are some of the objections you're hearing from some of the owners, developers, brands that might not have the same shared vision as you? And what are they not seeing?
Well, I like to push. I like to shatter conventions. I used to use the word disrupt a lot, but I know that can have some kind of negative connotation sometimes. But I think finding new white space is important, and finding out how to stand out in a crowded space. I think some of the objections I hear are Oh, that's not for me as a designer to think through. That's for owners. Owners, oh, that's not necessarily for us. That's for the architects. So I think there's sometimes a passing of the puck in terms of, who can truly own or contribute to where this goes. I see that sometimes. I see when it comes to technology playing a role, it's like, well, we've always done it this way. I mean, guests just keep coming. Why do we need to do anything different? So I think some of those are some of the objections that I see, and I always like to ask, well, I mean, do you want to sit in status quo and hope that you just survive and thrive, or do you want to lean into what's next and take signals from other industries and take signals of where general consumer trends are heading and think through, how do you maintain a leadership role in this next phase of guest experience, in the new role that technology plays, in the new demands of the 2025, 2026, 7, 8 consumer. Where do you want to be? And so I think that opens some doors to conversations. And then obviously those that come to the likes of these leading edge conferences, like at the BDNY and the ATM Dubai, the largest global travel show, people on the bleeding edge want to know what's coming. They want to see around corners. And I think as we start to unfold the opportunity of where technology and guest intersects, people want to know. And so it takes folks that are bold, that want to shatter conventions and want to take initial steps and think through, all right, how can this affect my property, my portfolio, my brand, and what do I need to do to truly continue to win hearts and minds?
One of the areas where I've seen technology kind of make an unpleasant experience more pleasant, but they're not really tapping into, I don't know, wearables and each individual, because it's kind of like being on a bus, is on the Boeing 787. They experimented with using new materiality. So I think it's all composite, so they can have more humidity going through the plane. So it's not, you don't get like so dried out. The lighting is totally different and and replicates what the sunrise or sunset or bright day is, to help you get more used to the jet lag. The windows are totally different. But I just find when I fly those planes on a long haul, that I just feel better at the end of it. And it's probably all these things that I'm not even aware of what they are. And I guess that goes back to the beginning of our conversation, when technology, I think, is best when it's seamless and not felt, and you only really notice it when it's abrupt or something goes wrong.
It's totally true. So funny. I love that you mentioned the 787 Dreamliner, my favorite plane. I worked with Boeing for many years on their recruitment advertising to help find the next level engineers and decorative painters and strategists that would come through to help create some of those new features that came on that plane. So it's so funny you mentioned that. Yeah, it's that ambient tech. It's those subtle differences that we as folks that understand this and see the impact on the experience and the feeling and we notice that. And so it's that was for me a tease out to where things are going. I think the next level of airline travel and comfort. So I think, what does that mean if, imagine, Dan, like, planes in the future are going to have these heat sensors in the seat, right? It's going to know, it's going to adjust to body temperature. If it knows, again, if your biometrics, if it understands that, Dan Ryan's about to board a 787 Dreamliner for his flight to Chicago. He's been racing through the airport. He was about to miss his flight. He spent too long in the luxury lounge ahead of time getting ready. He made it in, but it detected his body temperature. It's your seat in number 3A knows your body temperature. It is adjusting to the coolest, coldest setting the second you come in, Dan, because it knows you're running hot. All right. And it knows your hydration, which is starving thirst because you've been sprinting. It's going to arrange the time that you get on, that your drink is going to come and be there ready for you, your water or your chilled ginger ale, only the way Dan Ryan likes it.
But does it know that I'm super cheap and I probably bought a ticket in 28B?
No, because it knows where you're sitting. It knows you're up front. And if you're in 28B, it's not going to have your drink prepared and ready to be brought down yet, because it knows everyone's going to be backing up, putting cases up and backing up in the line to sit down. So I think that's that's the next phase we're going to be headed into. I think there's a real big, interesting moment, and it's just a matter of who's going to be ahead of the trend and who's going to be ready to capitalize on all the ways that we can leverage technology now, because AI is that thread that can listen to all the data we were already connecting and can respond because it's live, because the guest has opted in for the right value exchange to connect.
That's really super interesting about Boeing. I had no idea you worked on it. What are other big projects like that you've worked on and helped them think differently about how they approach what the offering is to whoever's going through whatever that built environment is that you're talking to?
Well, I'm actually pushing something pretty exciting on my own at the moment, Dan, which is actually born out of my heart health journey I've been on the last year and a half. I took, as a tech guy, I was deep in artificial intelligence, as I've spoken about, helping brands transform their experience in both healthcare and hospitality. And so I pointed that lens of AI and tech on my own patient journey in going through my heart surgery journey. And I realized that, gosh, I needed to make sense of in my case, the mountain of complexity associated with a major heart condition. And even though someone that's familiar with the space, I had to learn so much, and it was very highly emotional journey. And so I had to work out how to explain this to my children as well, what's happening with daddy's heart. So I used AI to help create some models that were trained on the cardiac disease state of open heart surgery and valve repair and all these big words and a lot of crazy stuff. And so I trained an AI agent on everything I could find on heart surgery. And then I asked it if it could create a Taylor Swift inspired song so my children could understand what's happening with daddy's heart. My daughter's a big Swiftie. And it was purely magic. So I thought, my gosh, if I can help my own sense of calm and ease of anxiety by introducing the concept of AI to help in between my doctor visits and help me prepare questions for my care team, why can't I do the same for others? So I'm launching a project called Hearts and Algorithms, intended for patients going through a crazy and highly anxiety ridden journey of heart surgery, to give them an outlet to have an emotional conversation in a patient app to help them in between visits with real patients. And what I'm finding is that early institutions, top tier institutions, are quite interested in this. I'm actively fundraising at the moment. So there's a lot of interesting things happening there in terms of taking the patient experience and helping ease their sense of anxiety and help them be more informed and cognitively aware of what they're going through using AI. So I'm always trying to find a way to kind of walk a mile in the shoes of my audience, whether it's the patient, whether it's the guest, whether it's the owner, the designer, the builder, the surgeon, and really try to understand what are the points of which the customer's experience can be enriched or more memorable or personalized or powerful using technology. That's what really gets me excited.
There's this idea of AI, or machine learning, it was called until a couple of years ago. Right now it's artificial intelligence. Then there's this artificial general intelligence, which is like an agent that can help you do whatever, or agents that can help you. And then people get freaked out when you start talking about artificial super intelligence, where I don't know if the machine becomes sentient or things of science fiction. As someone who is in this space and thinking about it, I'm not super scared of artificial intelligence. But as I start thinking more and going back to all the science fiction that I've read throughout my life and continue to read, this idea of artificial super intelligence gets a little gnarly. At what point do you think, if any, we need to start worrying?
Well, we've all seen Terminator 2. The media paints the picture of Terminator 2 and, Cyberdyne and all this type of stuff. As technology evolves, there'll always be both good actors and bad actors. And in my mind and in my heart, there's more good actors in the world than bad. And so I think what we're going to find is that there won't be a company, big or small, that isn't fully looking to integrate the beginnings of where AI can help them get more closer to the customer, be more efficient, scale larger, be more. There's this phrase in healthcare called the N of one, the ultimately personalized healthcare journey. That's treatment specifically to me. And so I think that's where we're headed. So I think in terms of the doom and gloom side, I mean, yeah, we'll see AI used in some pretty tough ways. You know, we're seeing, I think, the cybercrime, and I think a lot of that stuff is being amplified by what AI has the potential to do. But I think we're responding as well. So in terms of the doom and gloom, what does that take us to? Well, who knows?
I hear that people or governments and maybe companies are starting to think about and manage risk towards this artificial super intelligence that might happen, right? Um, but in the same way that there's this artificial super intelligence potential, which would make see us as a competitor and take everybody out. This is the doomy, gloomy part. Um, I do hope that there is some kind of push amongst citizens and governments to create some kind of a treaty to prevent that from happening. But then it's always, I don't know when Frankenstein was written in 1830 something, but there's always that human desire to push a little bit further, and you're like, I created what? And then boom. But I guess in the meantime, we should just all sleep better and heal better and just make the most of our lives.
Well, you know, the reality is it is very much a space race at the moment. It's the next space race. It is the race to acquire um, the most control over the best models that can yield the greatest outputs. And many of these companies aren't even profitable yet because the pure compute power it takes to generate a lot of this. But I think in this space race, unfortunately, we're seeing profit over good at the moment. But I think with standards and regulations and governments uniting, etc., I hope we don't create the same problem we created with social media that we see now in that the effect it's had on um, children.
Oh my God. Cause there's like really, and there's almost no accountability, right? At least in the United States, there's no accountability. And in some ways, that's not a bug, it's a feature because it kind of helps all these creators and tech bros and sisters kind of forge an unencumbered path forward. But I also think there's a moral hazard with that. Speaking of open heart surgery and organ transplants and all this, I know that there's bioethics that, okay, we shouldn't clone people, or I don't even know, like now I'm way out over my skis, but you can't tell me that there's not somebody in some lab somewhere, like in subterranean something that hasn't messed around with this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean with everything from gosh, gene editing, everything that's happening with CRISPR, all of this, it is there is an incredible amount of game changing stuff going on, and I think ultimately we need to have a safe and responsible approach to it, and reap the benefits from it, and also hope that we can ultimately point the compute that the largest economies on earth are putting money invested into the world's biggest problems. I mean, we hear people talk about how can it be used to solve climate change, poverty, world hunger, things like that.
Energy.
Energy, yeah. So the investment a lot of these main players are putting into in terms of the next level of energy as well, and buying up X kind of nuclear plants and converting them to massive data centers. I mean, it is a race.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm sorry, everyone and John, for going down the dark Frankenstein road. So let's bring it back. We're going to end on a positive note and say, John, as you look at everything and all the people that you're talking to and all of your past work, what's exciting you most about the next 10 years that you see happening? Help us land the plane into a positive coda.
land the plane is that what we're going to find is that in the future, that the travel going experience, the guest experience is going to be more than just a, oh wow, that was a nice stay, to my gosh, I actually can feel and have a numeric number on how well I came out of that guest experience and how well I came out of that travel experience to help get me to where I'm going next, whether that was to a major keynote presentation I was giving, whether that was to take my family on a incredible stay, in a tropical island, or whether that was just on some general business travel. I can come out knowing that it actually made me a better person. I actually felt better, and I have a wellness score connected to that. That's powerful. I think loyalty is gonna get a whole new meaning.
That's loyalty is going to get a whole new meaning. Because if you think about those brand moats that all the big brands have, it's their brand loyalty. That's what keeps them head and shoulders above all the independents as far as like night stays, dollars, everything. And if they can tie that somehow into their loyalty program, that is pretty rad.
I don't think it's gonna be about points anymore, Dan.
Yeah. It'll be like me waking up every morning since my wife got an Aura ring and says, "What was your sleep score?" And she always scores in the high 80s into the mid 90s and shames me when I get my 21 or 35.
Now, what can you now do with that score? How do you feel? What's different about you now?
I'm going to go stay in the new Apple hotel and just unleash all of my information to them so that they can tailor something to me and give me a complete immersive program for life and longevity. That's what I'm going to do. Let's go, Cupertino.
I love it. Let's do it, Dan. Let's start a pilot.
John, if people wanted to learn more about you and everything, all the exciting things that you're up to, what's a good way for them to reach out, connect, get in touch, and hear what's going on?
Absolutely. I'm available on my website is thejohnduffield.com. LinkedIn as well is the other big one.
Perfect. We'll be sure to keep all that in the show notes. John, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Larry and Missy, thank you for pushing us together, even though we were on the same advisory board, but really saying, no, you two really need to talk to each other. I appreciate you all very much. And I appreciate you, John, who also being a new neighbor. Who knew?
It's been great, Dan. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to all of our listeners. Without you, we wouldn't be having these incredible conversations with people like John and hearing what the future is all about as it pertains to hospitality, design, healing, wellness. And if you think or know anyone else who's working on a project that could benefit from some thinking on this, please pass this episode along. Just click on the link and send it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you. I appreciate all of you, and we'll catch you next time.